That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We're at DFW International. We're heading out somewhere. And I thought about making this a little thing, little activity. So I'll post it on my story on Instagram. Make sure you follow along. Make a little bit of a multiple choice type of quiz. Take a guess to where you think we're heading out to. All right. You'll know when we land. By now, we're in Las Vegas. Yes, that's where we're at. We actually are here for 1.5 days, guys. 1.5 days. That's all the time we have to spare. Thank you to my executive producer for making it happen. Anyways, we're gonna get in the mix. We're not gonna waste any time. We just came in a backpack and just have a few things. We didn't even bring a suitcase or nothing, so we're just heading straight to the strip. Let's make it happen. So the first two sessions I'll be going through fairly quickly. First one at Resorts World and the second one at Bellagio. The reason being is because they weren't very entertaining. The hands weren't that great and there wasn't too much to report there. So I want to kind of speed through these hands just so that I can get to the main session, which is Resort World Part 2 that we played before we head back home. So let's go through these hands real quick. First hand up, we have Ace-5 of clubs in the under the gun position. I limp in and limps a few ways to the small blind, who throws out a bet of $12. I go ahead and make the call, and so does under the gun 1. In between both of our opponents, we go 3 ways to a flop. From what I remember, the flop hits us fairly well, as we have a draw to the nut flush and also a gut shot to the straight. When it checks to me, I lead out for $15 and get both under the gun 1 and small blind to make the call. Still 3 ways to the turn, and the turn brings us the money card. I don't remember what the suit was, but I do know that it was a deuce. Small blind checks to me. I go ahead and throw out a bet of $20 and they both fold. We take this first pot down. Seems like things are going our way until we get dealt Ace Jack of spades. I'm in the cutoff this time, and when it limps to me, I throw out a bet of $15. Button makes the call, and under the gun 1 has other plans, and instead of making the call, he decides to shove his entire stack in for $105. Pretty interesting move here, as he limped in to begin with and now shoves. I tank for a bit and decide on just a call, hoping that I can price the button in, and instead he folds. So we're running it out, heads up to the flop, and the flop, I remember, comes out all low cards. Turn comes a queen, and the river breaks out for us. All we have is ace high here. Our opponent flips over his hand, and he has queen jack offsuit. So after bleeding some chips for a little while, we get ace queen offsuit, and we're in the hijack. Limps a few ways to meet. Under the gun throws out a bet of $15, and I 3-bet to $45. Folds all the way to under the gun, who just makes the call. Heads up to the flop, and I do remember the flop coming out king high, and I remember us both checking the flop and the turn. The river, we don't improve, and our opponent throws out a bet of $100. All we're beating here is a bluff. We go ahead and just fold. Beautiful poker room. Beautiful room. Great staff, great players, definitely a lot of regs here. I was playing against some really good opponents. They put me in a lot of tough spots, and we didn't fare very well today. We have been running pretty hot lately, about I think it was an 8-session win streak, and today that win streak has been broken. It's been busted. We were in the game originally for $300, cashed out for $0. Yeah, not a good session to say the least. We're head to the room, charge everything up, relax for a bit, then head back to the strip Either Aria or Bellagio. That's what I'm thinking. All right, let's go. So after about a 2-hour nap, we head from our room down to the strip to our room of choice, which is Bellagio. And I wouldn't be doing Bellagio justice if I didn't show at least a little bit of the beauty that Bellagio has to offer. So check it out as we make our way to the book room. And while you're at it, feel free to like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. So right away, we're dealt in Ace-Jack offsuit. As you can see here, we take the betting lead, throw out a bet of $15, and get only one opponent to call. We go heads up to the flop, and the flop doesn't hit us in any way. So when we checked our opponent throws out a bet of $30. I probably should have c-bet, but I just didn't feel like putting any money into the pot if I didn't have anything, and I fold here. After that last hand, we are card dead. Our fold button is working overtime because we are consistently pressing that button, throwing our hands in the muck. No good hands our way. It's driving me nuts. We're sitting here for close to 2 hours now, until finally we are dealt a playable hand. Man, it's about time. And finally, we get dealt a premium pocket jacks. We're in middle position. Under the gun raises to $12. I make click to 24, folds back to him, and he tank calls. Heads up to the flop, and from what I remember, the flop was pretty dry. 8-10 deuce, I believe it was a rainbow board. He leads for $12. I raise it up to $30, and he tank folds. So pretty straightforward hand. We take this pot down. Wish they could all look like this. Final hand here at Bellagio, and we have ace-queen suited in middle position. I raise it up to $12 and only get the button to come along. Heads up to the flop, and the flop comes out ace-10-5 with one club. We have top pair, pretty good kicker, and also a backdoor nut flush draw. I bet out $15. He tanks for a bit and makes the call. Turn improves me to the nut flush draw. I believe it was the 7 of clubs. I lead again for $30, and he asked me how much I have in my stack, thinks for a bit, and then shoves all in. Yeah, I don't know what happened there, but I quickly make the call for some reason. I'm thinking that I'm good. Maybe he was just trying to push me off my hand. And no, he flips over pocket aces. It's definitely not a hand I put him on, especially since he didn't 3-bet me pre-flop. So I'm drawing to a club and a club only. That's the only way I'm going to improve. The river comes out a brick. I believe it was the king of diamonds, if I remember correctly. And we completely whiffed this board. Not gonna lie, I'm pretty frustrated, pretty tilted. Things were definitely not going my way. And now I'm down another buy-in of $300. I'm done playing poker. I head back to my room and call it a night. Pretty rough, huh? Don't worry, things get a whole lot better for me here at Resorts World Part 2. Let's jump into the session. First hand of the vlog here at Resorts World, and we have Jack 10 offsuit in the big blind. Limps 3 ways to me, and I go ahead and check my option. Get to see my board for the $3, and the flop comes out Jack 9-8 rainbow. What a beautiful board for a hand. We do have top pair, and we are open-ended to the straight. I toss out a little feeler bet of $6. I want to gauge where I'm at. Under the gun, mid clicks to $12. Folds all the way back to us, and we have the easy call here. Turn comes a 5. This is an interesting card, as 7-6 can easily improve to the lower end of a straight. I go ahead and check to my opponent. looking to see what he does, and he tosses out a bet of $15. I basically go into a check call mode here. River comes out the 2 of diamonds, no help whatsoever for our hand. And once again, I check to my opponent, and he leads out for $20 this time. I go ahead and make the call. I am a little curious, and I don't see myself folding here. I want to see what he has, and sure enough, he shows a jack with the queen kicker. So we do get out kicked here. Oh well, we'll shake it off. On to the next hand. We got jack 8 in the low jack. So I hit the record button a little late because honestly, this isn't a hand I would normally play. This is definitely a folding hand. So for future reference, fold this hand. However, in this case, I felt it in my gut to make this call. So we pick up on the flop. We're going 6 ways. The flop comes out beautiful for our hand and very similar to the last hand, 10-9-5. We are open-ended. Under the gun 1 takes the leading bet and throws out $20. What a sizable overbet to the pot. We tank for a bit. We don't see ourselves folding here. We're going to go ahead and make the call and peel one, hoping to improve. The turn comes the beautiful, the amazing, the fantastic 7 of diamonds. So we improve to the straight, and even better, it's a rainbow board now, so we don't have to worry about any flush coming along. Let's freaking go. Music to our ears as once again the under the gun 1 opponent throws out another bet of $35 this time. We tank for a bit, really just Hollywooding here, want to seem weak, and we make the call. We're asking for a clean river card. Please don't pair the board. The card that comes out doesn't pair the board. However, it is the 8 of spades. So not really the best card here, as the obvious queen jack does improve now to a better straight. However, when he leads out for $35 again, this seems like a value bet, and I think if he had queen jack, he would most likely check to us, knowing that we'll throw out a bet and then check raises. I tank for a bit, and I decide I want to be the aggressor here, and I 3-bet him to $100. That's right, 1 red stack of $100. He looks very confused. He leans over, looks over to me. It just doesn't make sense with my play. Great, that's what I want. I want you to be confused. I want you to be curious. I want you to make this call. So after some time, he tanks and he throws in the chip. He makes the call. We flip over a hand and we're good. Great way to bounce back from that last hand. Moral of the story, if you feel it in your gut, go with it, guys. Don't fold, just go with it. Alrighty, next hand up, and this is an interesting one. We have queen 10 of clubs on the button. Limps a couple of ways to me, and I raise it up to $13. I get 2 callers from the hijack and the cutoff. 3 ways to the flop, and the flop comes out 10-5-4 with 2 diamonds. So a pretty dynamic board with the flush draw being out there. However, we have top pair with a pretty good kicker. And we have every intention to lead here, except hijack decides to be the aggressor here and throws out a bet of $12. Cutoff folds, and I go ahead and mid-click this to $24. I guess in my mindset during that time, I was thinking that I can put a little bit more money in this pot, and if he checks to me on the turn, lead out pretty big to take the pot down. At least that's what I think I was planning to do. Hijack decides on just a call, and now we're heads up to the turn. Turn comes a 4. He shows some aggression here and throws out a bet of $35. This is a pretty hefty bet on a pretty weird looking board. I tank for a bit thinking that maybe he's just trying to bet this sizing just to push me off the hand. After some time, I decided to call, but not gonna lie, not feeling too good going to the river. River comes out as 6. Not a very good card, as 8-7 easily gets there. I could see 6-4, playing this type of way. And on the 1-2 tables, people play with any 2 cards pretty much. I do pick up a tell on this particular opponent, which does serve me well later on. He has a tendency to correct his posture or straighten up and breathe in very deeply and breathe out pretty aggressively when he has a solid hand, especially when he follows it up with a pretty big bet. So after he does those exact behaviors I just described, he pushes all in for his remaining stack of $57. Usually when opponents do this and bet on all streets and then shove on the river, they're not bluffing. After some time, I think about it because I thought about calling, thinking that my hand might be good here. But after a while, I'll convince myself on a fold. Afterwards, he ends up flashing me ace-4. So we were ahead of him on the flop, and we were just behind the whole way on the turn in the river. Shake it off, on to the next one. Next hand up, we have ace-3 of clubs in the cutoff. Folds all the way to the hijack, who throws out a bet of $10. I go ahead and make the call, and everyone else folds. So we're in position, heads up to the flop, and the flop comes out king 7-5 with the 7 of clubs. So not the worst board for a hand. Have a couple of backdoors here and there. So when it checks to me, I go ahead and check behind. Hopefully we can improve on the turn, and improve we do. The turn comes the 4 of clubs. Great card for a hand. We have a draw to the straight with any 2, and on top of that, the draw to the nut flush with any club. He checks to me, and I decide I'm going to throw out a tiny bet, trying to get that crying call, and I throw out a bet of $10, and he pretty quickly folds. It's a little uneventful there. I would have liked to see what would have happened on the river. Alrighty, on to the next one. Okay, next hand up, we have ace-queen offsuit in the button. Not too bad of a hand to have in this position. Under the gun one leads for $11, folds all the way to me, and since everyone else is folding, I want to go ahead and mid-click this just to get a little bit more money in this pot, and I mid-click it to $21. He makes the call, and we're going heads up to this flop. The flop comes out 10-8-7 rainbow. Pretty dynamic board. There's a lot of straight possibilities out there, and all we have are 2 overs. So when he checks to me, I want to continue aggression. I want to push him off this pot, to be honest, and I throw out a bet of $30. He tanks for a bit and makes the call. Turn is another 8. Not a very good card for us, as it does pair the board, so we do got to be careful here. He checks, and I go ahead and check back as well. I want to get to the river cheaply, seeing if we can improve. River comes, a face card, but it's a king. So we whip this board completely, and to make matters worse, he throws out a bet of $50. Wow, what a bet. I just don't see how I'm good here. Don't see how this is a bluff, and I'm not just going to call off $50 with ace high on a very dynamic board here. So I painfully fold, and he takes the pot down. Things are not looking too good for us right now. We're running a little cold. We're really hoping we can catch some cards and bring in some chips after a very, very tough trip out here in Vegas. Oh yeah, big money's about to happen with pocket jacks in the small blind. There's an under the gun straddle to $6, and it folds all the way to me. Unbelievable. I want to put some money into this pot, so I throw out an extra $6, making it 12 to go. And the straddler just makes the call. Heads up to the flop, and the flop is 9-3 king. Of course, it's an overcard to our hand. I check to my opponent, and he checks as well. The turn comes out the queen of hearts, another bad card for a hand. However, since he's showing weakness, we go ahead and take advantage and exploit him. I throw out a bet of $10, expecting to get called most of the time, but he folds. So we take this pot down despite the scary overcards on the board. All right, next hand up, we have king queen offsuit in middle position. When it limps to me, I bump it up to $15, and I get calls from the button and under the gun. Going 3 ways to the flop, and the flop comes out pretty good for our hand. King 8 jack rainbow. So no flush draws to worry about. However, there are some straight draw possibilities out there, such as your 10-9s, your queen 10s, your jack 10s, your jack 9s. So I want to charge the max for these particular types of hands to come along. So when it checks to me, I throw out a bet of $20. I figure at least one of my opponents would peel one, see if they can improve on the turn. If they don't, I'll lead out again. Unfortunately, they both fold. Either way, glad to take this pot down. On to the final and last hand of the vlog. And guys, let me tell you, this hand is definitely a chip. Crazy hand in play. I definitely saved the best for last for my fine viewers. Hope you enjoy. I have been looking forward to creating, editing, and sharing this hand on the vlog. This is definitely the ultimate cooler. Probably using that as my title for the vlog. I have a premium. I'm talking about the best hand ever and probably my new favorite hand. 6-3 of clubs, and I'm on the big blind. Remember the opponent I mentioned a few hands back where he has the tendency to fix his posture and breathe in deeply and giving those tells away when he has a good hand? Well, ladies and gentlemen, he's in this hand. And by the way, he's a really cool guy and a new fan of the vlog. Limps 3 ways to me, and I go ahead and check my option. I had no intention to raise his hand. I really didn't have any intention to play it. If I wasn't on the big blind, I would have definitely folded this hand. Well, the flop comes out deuce, 6, 6. Unbelievable. We hit trips. Our hand is super disguised. So on me to act, and I just checks to the middle position, who throws out a bet of $7. Button makes the call as well. And back to me, I want to put a little bit more money in this pot. I've been mid-clicking this entire session. Might as well mid-click here. So I mid-click it to $14. Middle position tanks for a bit and makes the call. And so does the button. So we're going 3 ways to the turn now. And the turn is the 8 of diamonds. This is a nasty little card as it does put 2 flush draws out on the board now. However, we're not too concerned about this card. But I do want to lead out for a substantial amount to push out the random draws or to charge them the max. I lead for $35 this time. Middle position tanks for a bit, then makes the call. Interesting. Gets to the button. Before I tell you what the button does, prior to this hand, it was about 2 hands ago, since we had been going back and forth, we had a conversation about if we have good hands that we would let each other know, and we would use baseball signals. Rubbing the ear, rubbing the nose, waving over our head, stuff like that. Baseball signals. Well, he decides on a raise. He raises to $100. 1 stack of red chips. He leans over and looks at me and rubs his ear. And he smiles when he's doing it. So I have to take this into account. I have a great hand. I have trips. However, what could my opponent have? Does he have aces? Does he have kings? Does he have queens? I don't know if these are the type of hands he would have since he didn't raise it pre-flop. So I have to really think, what could my opponents have? Especially middle position, who called my $35 raise. Maybe one of these opponents have a 6. Regardless of the fact, I'm not folding my hand, so that's out of the picture. It's literally down to either calling or shoving all in. After some time, tanking, I decide that the only thing that makes sense to me, especially in later streets, is to shove all in. If I made the call, I would have less than a pot size bet, especially if middle position comes along. So this is what I do. I shove all in for $247 total. That is including the $35 that I put out there. Middle position tanks for a bit and then ends up just calling. Wow, this is crazy. Back to the button, and the button doesn't take much time before he makes the call. So now we're all in 3 ways. Well, we end up showing our hands, and I'm extremely worried because the button ends up looking at me and tells me, I told you I had a good hand, and flips over pocket deuces. He flopped the boat. Middle position shows he has a 6 with a 7 kicker. I have the worst feeling in my gut right now. Not only do we have to hit one of the remaining 3s to improve our hand to a better full house, we also have to fade 7s and deuces. This is not looking good for us. Honestly, I even started to kind of gather my bag because I was going to head straight to the airport after this. I am not feeling very good about this until the river comes out. A miracle 3. I couldn't freaking believe it. I flip over my hand and we are good. Listen in to the reaction of the table. It's priceless.
The river. Freaking river. Oh my God. What a river. Okay. Wow. What a river. Okay. Man. On the river. Unbelievable.
Yeah, trust me. I'm astonished. I'm stunned. My opponent looks over at me, the guy who, baseball signals, and he is surprised that I made my play with how I played it. But I reminded him that, hey, I was on the big blind. I checked my option. It just so happened that this board came out amazing for our hand. Being down the first session when I came here at Resorts World, $300. Down another $300 playing at Bellagio. And now we're up $600 in profit. We actually broke even. To think that I was going to go back home to Texas being down $600 out of my bankroll to being back to even, catching up right before I got to go to the airport. Wow, what an amazing run out, amazing experience. I am so happy. We don't stay too much longer because like I mentioned, I got to go to the airport. We cash out. The adrenaline was pumping. Just me talking right now, I'm reminded of that adrenaline and how it felt. I hope you enjoyed this hand as much as I enjoyed vlogging it. This was definitely a chip, crazy hand in play. Thanks for tuning in and staying till the end. Wow, no freaking way. Man, I'm pumped. It's crazy how it's crazy how a one-hand swing can just change everything. Sorry, I had to fix my hat. I'm stunned. I'm just stunned how this session turned around for me. With this win, with this massive win, we end up breaking even. Yeah. 2 losing sessions in a row in one day, and to come back and scoop it all up the next day, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm freaking talking about. Thankfully, you know, it all worked out for us. Got to grab our Uber, heading out to the airport, back home, back to reality, back to Texas. Man, I'm still in awe with this hand. Really great guy. Great people, this was a great table. This was probably the best table of the night, I would say. Chatting it up with everyone and just, you know, meeting everyone, and everyone was so cool. Shout out to you, brother. I didn't get your name, man, but you know, it was great playing with you. Just hitting those pocket deuces on the flop. You basically had it the whole way until the river. Like you said, nasty cooler. Nasty cooler. Appreciate the Resorts World. Amazing room. I should have just played here the 3 times. Amazing room, great people, great staff. It's so cool because everybody just kept calling me Bearded throughout the entire, wherever I was going. Hey, what's up, Bearded? Hey, what's up, Bearded? So thank you for the love and support, everyone. And we're going to continue doing what we do. Alrighty, Bearded Poker out.